What's up, guys? We're back with another NECA Toys Toon Turtles 2-pack. That was hard to get out. So we're taking a look today at the Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady 2-pack. This thing just kind of appeared out of nowhere in part of the Haulathon thing that they're doing. So this is one that they didn't really advertise, didn't really announce. It was sort of, stealth dropped in a video that they did. But they're already hitting stores. So we've got them here, of course, in the standard 2-pack style packaging. So yellow, green motif, figures in the window, and then you've got some cartoon style artwork in their respective corners, product shots on the sides and the back, and then of course you've got a bio in general, write-up, whatever you want to call it, for Turtles, and then cross-sell for some of the recent stuff in the line. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go. Out of the package are Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady, or should we call them Super Rocksteady and Mighty Bebop, because the episode is entitled one thing, but they're actually called something else in the show. They're flipped, and I don't know what's supposed to be correct. So Krang calls them Super Rocksteady and Mighty Bebop. I don't know, a little bit of trivia. One of the few things I remember from this episode, except for the fact that these guys really don't do a whole lot. They're basically in it, and that's it. So they're pretty weird, but they are definitely figures that I'm excited to get because they are so different. So they maybe aren't the most important characters or important versions of Bebop and Rocksteady, but robot versions, you don't have to try too hard to get me to want them. So let's see what we've got, see how these guys move. They are pretty normal for a Bebop and Rocksteady kind of figure. I'm not so sure if they move better than I think they do or not, because they feel really locked down in certain places. But let's see what we've got going on. So I'm going to move Rocksteady aside for now, and we'll concentrate on Bebop first. So we got a head that can look up about that far. You do have an articulated jaw. So of course it opens up more the higher the head is raised. It'll open up a little bit when he's looking down though, still not too bad. You do have a little bit of tilt. You've got full rotation, of course. Arms go out at the shoulders. Watch these pads. They are a separate piece, so if you push them too far, you could pop them out, and they're just glued into the shoulder, but, just watch out. And then, of course, they rotate. This is where you're going to really have the problem. And then about that far backward, you've got your bicep swivel. We've, of course, got double-jointed elbows. They go about that far. Pretty good range. And then we've got hinges, and we've got rotation at the wrist. Now, where I feel like he is locked down, or it's a situation where I am unable to get the joint free no matter what I do, both he and Rocksteady do seem to be really locked down at the diaphragm. So, like if I kind of get my finger in there, I can make him move. So that's the top moving, and then he'll shimmy a little bit forward and backward. But I'm really having to force it, and I've heated him up, and I just don't know how far these guys are supposed to move. I have no idea because they're so new. But they do swivel at the torso, or at the diaphragm. They swivel at the waist, and then he does have a little forward and a little backward. The more I work on it, the more it seems to want to go. But honestly, I've put so much effort into this, I'm really just not sure how much more it needs to be for me to just worry if I'm going to break him or not. So, your mileage may vary on this. Obviously, he's only going to go so far. Like, he is crunched over slightly there, and he does have the jacket on, so that is going to get in the way. He definitely goes backwards a little bit more, though. So maybe he doesn't go too much further. I really don't know. The Bebop and Rocksteady regular figures don't really have much torso articulation either. And they're definitely built on that same kind of framework. Legs go out this far. They are the current style, the ball and socket. They kick forward. They go backwards. You've got your twist, squeaky twist. And we've got double jointed knees. There's a knee pad there, so it's going to stop it. And then you've got hinges, really good hinges, and pretty good rocker down there too. So, pretty normal, especially for a Bebop figure. There's not too much here that seems out of place or weird. Again, the torso does seem to be a little bit odd. Now let's move him aside and bring Rocksteady back, because he's similar, but he's also a little bit different too. So with Rocksteady, the head looks up really far, and you've got an even wider articulating jaw. Now, when he's down, it doesn't open nearly as much, but it still opens a little bit. You've got your tilt. We've got side-to-side rotation. Arms go out. They go all the way around, of course. You've got your bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, same as Bebop. All this stuff is the same as Bebop, hinges at the wrist. Now his torso is different. It's a different kind of cut. So he goes backwards a little bit. Not too bad, really. And then he goes forwards. I mean, I'm really pushing it, too. He goes forwards about that far. Like this, that's neutral. So you can get him to go down to about here, roughly. Not really any tilt because of the piping on the side. And then this is a rotation point, as is the waist itself. So he's a little bit easier. Bebop is really hard to just move for me because he's so confined under that jacket with the bandolier also. So that might be playing a factor here. Legs out, only about this far. Same kind of legs as Bebop. Kick forward, about that far. You've got your twist, of course. Got double jointed knees. He's super, super tight though. There we go. Stressing somebody out watching that, I bet. And then we've got rocker. His rocker's better because his ankles are cinching a little bit more. And then you've got hinges. They're the same legs, but they're different feet. So they are, I mean, they're very similar to each other. There's no doubt about it. They are incredibly similar figures, but their designs do make them change up just a little bit when it comes to the torso, a little bit at the ankles, and then the head, neck, mouth region. Overall, though, they do move pretty well. I am still a little curious if there's more to the torso story, at least on Bebop. But again, I have heated them up. I have really, really pushed them, and they don't want to move much more than they are. So your mileage may vary. I'd love to know if somebody has had a little bit more success, but so far they do seem to be slightly locked down at the torso. Visually, it's not surprising that NECA has once again absolutely killed it with these. I mean, at this point, it's expected that they're going to do a great job when it comes to translating very specific styles of media into figure form. And these guys are no exception. They use a lot of the same parts in many ways. Like there's a lot of the same arms, same legs, stuff like that. Basically the entire legs except for the feet, and then the entire arms except for the forearms are the same. Hands are the same, of course, too, which none of that is a problem. It's just something to point out. But then, of course, they've got their own style of torsos and, of course, their own heads with their own bits of armor that make them look, I mean, fairly unique. So Bebop has, you know, his shoulder pads have guns sticking out of him this time. Rocksteady's got these big cannons on his back. He gets a cool forearm gun. So there's all sorts of little stuff. Rocksteady's got the piping all over him. And then, of course, Bebop has his telltale, you know, jacket. He still has a jacket for like a robot. He's still got a Robo jacket on. But really, as usual, it's all about the aesthetic translating into a figure. And NECA's done a really good job of keeping these guys very matte, keeping the colors very flat. And just, I mean, these two look like they jumped right out of the screen, point blank. They look fantastic, and I'm really, really happy with them, especially for something that ended up being kind of like a surprise drop. Like we didn't know that these were coming until we got the little teaser, and then of course they started hitting stores. So it's one of those things where it's nice to kind of get a really cool set, almost without even knowing about it too much beforehand. So yeah, I'm very happy with these. We will do a size comparison between some other stuff here shortly. But they're very Bebop and Rocksteady. They're very, very much the same kind of figure that we've seen from the regular versions, just done up in robot form. So a lot of grays, and then, of course, you know, a lot of whites on Rocksteady. You've got tons and tons of that cel-shaded style lining and the panel lining all over it. Bebop's is super, super thick. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it really stands out. It makes him pop a little bit more. That stark white mohawk really does something for me, and having pupil-less eyes on Rocksteady in particular makes him look incredibly evil. There's something about him that looks a little bit more menacing to me than Bebop. I don't know, I'm sure a rhinoceros is probably a little more menacing than a Warthog anyway, but I'm pretty happy with these. I mean, I'm sure you can tell. I really don't have any complaints. Paint is really nice, clean and crisp. I don't have too much to speak of when it comes to, you know, paint slop or flubs or anything like that anywhere. They're big, chunky, beefy figures with pretty crazy sculpt, a lot of new stuff on these guys, which is always nice to see. And then, of course, really great paint work that accentuates just a pretty wacky design. So it's two figures that you're very much used to in terms of feel and movement in many ways. And of course, you know, the general design is very much Bebop and Rocksteady, but it's something entirely different at the same time being translated into these really angular heads. And then, of course, this very, very different color scheme that still manages to incorporate a lot of what makes them them. Now, as far as comparisons go, of course, here we are with Bebop and with Rocksteady over here, so you can get an idea of what these guys look like next to each other. They're very, very similar. Like, they're not too far apart. Bebop is taller than his Robo counterpart, but only by a little bit, and Rocksteady is basically the exact same kind of figure, although the original Rocksteady did not have any kind of diaphragm cut. So our new figure does, of course, have a little bit more articulation, not to mention the fact that both of our new figures have those newer style joints. Now, Bebop and Rocksteady did get reissues that I think have those as well, but mine are those originals, so they have those older style, more janky kind of joints at their hips. Otherwise, though, I mean, they're very, very similar, and as they should be. They should match pretty well, being that they are, of course, you know, Robo counterparts. So I'm pretty happy with how these guys size up, and if you have Bebop and Rocksteady, you know that the robots are some big, chunky figures. And then here they are next to a turtle. So here we go with Leonardo. I figure he makes a pretty good example of just how big these guys are. Again, if you have Bebop and Rocksteady, you already know. Let's move him aside and we'll do one more NECA. Here is the Toon. Cape's going to get in the way. There we go. Toon Shredder. And yeah, that's a custom cape. Obviously, he doesn't come with that. But you get an idea of what they look like next to a standard, well, a regular human character, because there aren't very many of those in this line. And then let's do something else, do an entirely different line, but something that scales, you know, 7-inch-ish. So here they are with a Thundercat, because, you know, all this stuff is handy right now. Here we go with Tigra, and you can see that he's a little bit taller than them, so as far as, you know, ultimates from Super 7, like the standard humanoid characters might be a little bit bigger. And then let's do a normal 1/12 Hasbro figure just for fun. Here they are with Nova. So they definitely are going to look like big, beefy bruisers when it comes to Hasbro stuff, just by comparison. I don't think this is a bad scale. They look really big and monstrous. So they're going to have some size. If you've got Bebop and Rocksteady for the 50th time, they're very much in line with that. Now, as far as accessories goes, these guys are pretty stacked. They have a decent number of hands. They've got a bunch of weapons, stuff that does and doesn't go with them, I'm sure. I'm sure some of this stuff does not go with them, actually. So we've got some hands to start with. They have fists on them in the box, so each of them get a set of fists. And then each of them get a set of gripping hands, which are also trigger finger hands. So you've got these, so that's another 4 hands. And then each of them get a set of relaxed hands, which is another 4 hands. So there's 8 hands in the box. And of course, 4 of them are already on the figure, so 12 in total. We get some new guns. I believe these are new, right? So we get this smaller one, we get this bigger one, and I really like both of these. I really like the bigger chunky guns that we can use with Bebop and Rocksteady because it makes them look even bigger. These are very cartoony in every respect. I love the little drill motif on this one. But they're different enough so that, you know, you can make them a little bit more specific to the character that you want to use them with. We get the parking meter that has been ripped out of the ground. This is my favorite accessory in the entire pack. So you've got this, and you can go bash some turtles over the head. You've even got like some dirt and some sidewalk on here at the bottom, which is really cool. But this is awesome. This is exactly the kind of accessory I like to get when it comes to these sets. And then we get some stuff that doesn't necessarily go with them. And again, one thing that I just cannot even remember. So the first thing is this. This is, and I asked folks to try to help me figure out what these two things were in particular. This is the polarity deflector from an entirely different episode. As like I said, these guys are in just the episode and they don't really do anything. There's not a whole lot in there. There's a device called the Mesmerizer, which is surprisingly not in this box. And then there's also the remote that controls these guys, which is surprisingly not in the box. A lot of people thought that's what this was, but it's definitely not. This is the polarity deflector from Return of the Technodrome. So yeah, there's this thing. I don't know what I'm ever going to do with it. This is one of those weird deep cut accessories that I like to see them, but I don't ever know what to do with them. And then we get this bomb, which is definitely not the Mesmerizer from the episode. The only similarity they share is that they're both round. So this thing is entirely different. I mean, it's clearly a time bomb of some kind. I just can't place what it's from. And that happens a lot. I mean, there's some of these things are from entirely different seasons, entirely different episodes. So it's hard to know. There's only so much TMNT knowledge rotting in my head. So we've got these, and again, you know, they don't go to this episode. They aren't reflective of these two figures, but I do like getting this kind of stuff. That said, I think it would have been really cool to just get the stuff that goes with them. Get the Mesmerizer that Bebop and Rocksteady, the regular ones, use, and then get the remote control that the Turtles can use to shut these guys down. But overall, undoubtedly they have a really solid array of stuff. I really like the parking meter. I think this is a really cool accessory. And then they've got some cool guns and a decent array of hands. So yeah, overall, very happy with these guys. You know, a lot of that comes from the fact that I was really easily able to get them. That was very unexpected. This sort of just started popping up, and then hey, they were in town, so I could get them. So that's fun on its own. They're great figures in their own right, though. Of course, it's not just because I had an easy time getting them. They do, of course, move pretty well. I still think there might be a little bit more torso articulation at Bebop. I just can't get him to move, so maybe that's it, or maybe I just didn't do enough. But I did put these guys through the ringer. However, they look fantastic. I'm really all about the visuals when it comes to this line. I mean, being able to move is, of course, a big aspect of being an action figure, but they have to hit that aesthetic, and NECA always really delivers when it comes to this, and these guys are no exception. They're very much Bebop and Rocksteady, but they're also very much their own separate thing that harkens back to what makes them so unique and so cool. So there's a lot to enjoy with this particular set. Some cool new accessories, great looking figures, and yeah, who doesn't want a robot Bebop and Rocksteady? They basically sell themselves. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys cartoon Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.